Texas football adds another win to their record. Texas volleyball kicked off their season in Norman. And we will take an inside look at this week in fantasy football. All of this and more coming up on College Press Box. Good evening and welcome to College Press Box. I'm your host, Hannah Burbank. We have a packed show for you all tonight as Texas sports had an eventful and overall winning weekend. Now let's get straight into it with some football. Texas football took off for their first conference game of the season up in Lubbock against Texas Tech. And what an entertaining game that was. Both the Longhorns and the Red Raiders entered the game 1-0. Texas was favored to win the game by almost 18 points, but that was not the case. The Longhorns narrowly escaped with the game in overtime to take the 63-56 win over Tech. Let's take a look at the highlights. To start the game, Texas quarterback Sam Ehlinger runs the ball for the Longhorns to get a quick 7-0 lead. Ehlinger then fakes the handoff and finds Joshua Moore for a 31-yard touchdown. Texas leads 17-7. And moving on to the second quarter, Tech quarterback Alan Bowman hits Carter on the slant. Carter runs through traffic and takes it in for the 22-yard touchdown. Tech put some more points on the board, this time Bowman finding Izukama in the end zone to make the score 24-21 Texas. And after a blocked Texas punt, Tech starts in Longhorn territory. Bowman gets picked off by Chris Adamora, who takes it back 71 yards to Tech's 19-yard line. This was a huge play for the Longhorns. Jumping into the fourth quarter, Bowman hands it off to Thompson, who battles his way through the Texas defense and all the way for a 75-yard touchdown for Thompson. Tech leads 56-41 with just 3 minutes and 13 seconds left in the game. But don't count Texas out yet, as Ehlinger finds Brennan Eagles for the touchdown to bring Texas within 7. And Cameron Dicker with the onside kick. And Texas recovers on the Texas Tech 42. Tech leads 56-48 with under 2 minutes left in the game. And Ehlinger finds Joshua Moore once again for an 18-yard touchdown. Texas needs to get that 2-point conversion to tie up the game. And Ehlinger takes the snap and finds Brennan Eagles on that weak side for the 2-point conversion. Texas ties it up 56-all. Now in overtime, Texas got the ball first and Ehlinger finds Joshua Moore for Texas is up 63-56. Fourth down, Bowman escapes the pocket and throws it, but it is intercepted by Caden Stearns. Texas wins a thriller of a game, 63-56. And for more on the game, here's John Kelly.
Last Saturday, the Longhorns and the Red Raiders met for the 70th time on the gridiron. It was an absolute thriller of a game, seeing Texas mount a 15-point comeback in the last minutes of the fourth and to win it in overtime. While the Longhorns may have secured the victory, Tom Herman gave his thoughts on how the Horns got in the hole.
Obviously, the tackling on defense, I felt like it was last year. I did. And, you know, with no spring ball, very limited contact in fall camp, you know, I think and then, you know, playing UTEP in our opener, I think the speed of the game, you know, got to our guys a little bit. I really do.
Herman gave some insight into the fourth quarter comeback.
Our quarterback actually looked at me and he said, they left us too much time. He said, we're going to tie this thing up and win it in overtime. And I believed him. Shoot, if Sam Ehlinger was trying to sell me oceanfront property in Arizona, I'd probably write him a check. He's usually right on. And he was right. And, you know, really proud of the offense and, you know, for being able to do that. Proud of our onside kick team to get the ball back.
Despite being a difficult victory, when asked, Herman believes that this game is an important step to becoming a great team.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, we had a couple players say the same thing in the locker room, that, you know, great teams have a game or two like this. You know, we saw the two teams that played in our conference championship last year had some real nail biters. You know, I think Baylor had a couple overtime wins, stuff, you know, things like that. So, you know, they all count the same. But for us to find the intestinal fortitude to come out and not give up, not hang their head, down 15 with three minutes and some change left, find a way to win that thing. I think there's a lot of confidence that can come from that, but also a lot of humility. And that was the thing that I stressed, and that some of the leaders on the team, some of the kids stressed. Hopefully this humbles some guys in there that thought this was going to be easy, that every game was going to be like UTEP. And I think that point was made very clear here today.
After this thrilling matchup, the Longhorns take on another in-state rival, TCU, this Saturday, while the Red Raiders travel up to Manhattan, Kansas to play recent OU upsetters Kansas State. From Jones AT&T Stadium in Lubbock, Texas, I'm John Kelly, TSTV Sports.
I'm now joined by our football analyst, Jason Kinander. Thank you for being here. Jason, it was a nail-biter of a game on Saturday, with it going back and forth between the Longhorns and the Red Raiders. Diving into the game, what are you thinking? Happy to leave Lubbock with the win, or was it too close for comfort?
Well, Hannah, in my opinion, a win is always a win, especially when you come back down 15 with just 2.5 minutes left. That's impressive against any team. Needless to say, the 2-minute drill looked very sharp, scoring 15 points in 2 minutes. The defense, even though they gave up 56 points, they came up with some huge plays. Caden Stearns with the interception at the end of the game, Chris Brown with an interception earlier in the game, and everybody knows that was a fumble on 3rd down in overtime. So the defense, while the big amount of points given up is not good on paper, they came up with plays when it mattered. Back to offense, Ellinger running the ball, something that we haven't seen too much of. I guess that could be a new weapon, especially with Bijan Robinson being hurt, might not be available for the TCU game. Would be huge to have Ellinger running the ball being such a threat. I think Joshua Moore is starting to emerge as a top-tier receiver in the country with all those touchdowns, especially over the last 2 games. And Brennan Eagles coming up huge in the 4th quarter, looking like a reliable late game, late drive target. 63 points is very impressive against, even though it came against Tech, who is notorious for giving up big yardage and points. So happy to come out with a win. 2-0 feels amazing. First time in the Herman era, so couldn't be happier.
All right, 63 points is impressive. And senior quarterback Sam Ellinger played a key role in making this last-minute victory possible for the Longhorns. And Ellinger has broken many records during his time here at Texas, with one of the most recent being that he is the only Texas quarterback to throw for 5 touchdowns in 2 consecutive games. Did Sam establish his legacy at Texas?
I'm going to say not yet. I'd like to see the season come to an end, which would end his career at Texas, but he is one step closer, as you said, with 5 touchdowns in 2 consecutive games. The craziest thing to that about me is that came in just 6 quarters and obviously 1 overtime drive. I think that it's safe to call Sam the Heisman frontrunner at this point with 11 total touchdowns and just 1 interception. Again, won't have a full answer until the season's over, but one of the most impressive things about Ellinger's season so far is that on paper, this is Texas's thinnest supporting cast. No Devin Duvernay, no Lil Jordan Humphrey, no Colin Johnson. So regardless of where the team finishes this year, Ellinger is certainly cementing his place as one of the best quarterbacks in school history. And if they can really finish this year on a strong note, potentially as a playoff team or playing in a New Year's Six bowl game, he'll be right up there with Colt McCoy and Vince Young.
I hear you. And in the last meetup between Texas and Texas Tech, the Longhorns won by 25 and were expected to win by a comfortable margin on Saturday as well. Despite a handful of mistakes from the Longhorns, they did end up winning, but in overtime. Is this a game that is going to have an impact on Texas's playoff chances?
I'm going to say not yet, considering that we are only 2 games into the season, and with 2 Power 5 conferences not playing yet, there's no indication that style points will actually matter as much as it typically does, especially with Oklahoma and LSU already losing games. Things could be so much worse for Texas. Just being 2-0 is great, still in the top 10 of the AP poll, and in the coming 2 weeks, such a big opportunity to do a number of things. First of all, show that they are a playoff-worthy team, build a playoff resume, and make people forget about that shaky performance. Everybody's going to remember the 15 points in 2 minutes, but we can't completely shy away from the fact that was a game that they should have won by 2 scores at the very least, and they barely won. So to answer your original question, right now, I don't think that it's too much of a blemish, especially considering that they actually won the game. But as we get down to the last couple of games in the season, this could very well be used against Texas, especially if there are only a couple teams remaining with 1 loss, no loss. Be very interesting to see how things play out. The Big Ten and the Pac-12, how the number of games that those teams play will impact the playoff seeding. So right now, I don't think that it's going to hurt them. Obviously, it can because how close it was. And it also depends on how Texas Tech finishes their season, because I think we were all a little bit impressed by how Tech looked.
Well said, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. When we come back, Emme Basnett will recap this weekend's successful start to Texas volleyball. Welcome back to College Press Box. Last week, Texas volleyball kicked off their season against their rival Oklahoma Sooners in Norman. In Thursday's first match, they swept the Sooners 25-18, 25-16, and 25-21. Junior Logan Eggleston came ready to play and led the Longhorns with 17 kills, 2 digs, and a block. In Friday's match, the Longhorns took down the Sooners in 4 sets. Eggleston brought her A game again, posting 18 kills, but was also joined by 4 other Texas players who posted double-digit kills as well. Skylar Fields had 16 kills, Brianne Butler and Molly Phillips had 12, and Asia O'Neal had 11. Up next, the Longhorns will take on the Kansas Jayhawks at home this Thursday and Friday. I'm now joined by volleyball analyst Emme Basnett. Happy to have you, Emme, and it was a great showing for the Longhorns in the start to their season. They took a 3-0 sweep over the Sooners on Thursday and returned on Friday for a 3-1 win. Break down these games a little bit for us. How did this Texas team look?
Yeah, Hannah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it was a really great season opener doubleheader for the Horns. They swept Oklahoma, just like you were saying. They looked like a well-oiled machine. A lot of the coaches were kind of commenting on the chemistry of the players and how it looked like this team came in with confidence. They knew what they were doing. Like you said, Junior Logan Eggleston with 17 kills. That is an offensive powerhouse that we have going into these games. It looked a little shaky. How are we going to recover from losing seniors? But yeah, Logan Eggleston, like you were saying, and Skylar Fields as well, having a lot of kills, bringing the Horns to a sweep. And it looks really promising for them to attack offensively, but also defensively. They looked really good. We had new recruits kind of making their season debuts, making a statement kind of in the opening games. Yes, like you said, they finished out their doubleheader, and it just kind of sets the tone for the rest of the season, opening with such strong wins against an opponent with the caliber of Oklahoma is really telling for how this season might go, especially since it's just conference play. And I'm really excited to see how the team continues to progress and continues to play this season.
Absolutely, I agree with you there. And this is actually the first season without the Longhorn All-American Micaiah White, who graduated. Has Texas found a replacement for her, and who's really standing out for the Longhorns this season?
Right. So I guess replacing somebody like Micaiah White is a feat. And I think the team, instead of replacing her, is trying to implement hitters in a way where it's not like they're trying to replace her, but they're definitely filling that void in a way. But it's not just one person. I think it's a combination of Logan and Skylar Fields. And they showed how dominant they can be in this season opener, like we were talking about before. They also were voted the Big 12 favorite. This team is known for its dominance in the Big 12. It has caught the attention of many people just as being a dominant force within the Big 12, known as the favorites. And also Jenna Gabriel, she set a new career high in this game with 58 assists, 9 digs, 3 blocks. That's definitely a standout for this game as well. Not just on the offensive side, but the defensive side. It's really impressive that people were putting up just career highs in this game. And also, I thought like the OU coach kind of summed it up pretty well about how this team is looking for the season. But he said that Texas has this identity about them when they enter a game, that you can feel them, their presence as blockers, as returners on the service line. All around, we have talent. And I think that's what really sets this team apart. And I think it's pretty impressive.
Texas definitely is an intimidating group. And for the 10th straight year, the Longhorns are the preseason pick to win the Big 12 title. Who's going to be Texas's competition this year? And do you think any other Big 12 team can stop this Texas team?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think OU was one of the teams that Texas was worried about, and we saw how they performed in the doubleheader with a sweep. I would have to say, obviously, Baylor. Last year, Baylor did beat the Horns for the first time since 2001. I'm pretty sure that Texas team is still feeling that loss, and going into this season, that game will definitely provide some trouble for them. We'll kind of see what they are really made of up against a team like Baylor is, and like they have been in the past in the Big 12. But it is anyone's game, honestly. The Big 12 is kind of a parody where every team has its strengths and weaknesses, and anyone can upset anyone. So I definitely, this team cannot go into any game too overconfident. They still have to keep playing at this level. And facing that team without Micaiah White may present a challenge for them as well. So I would like to see how the offense continues to perform against teams like Baylor or Iowa State. And yeah, it'll just be interesting to see how they fare going forward. But yeah, I would have to say Baylor has to present the biggest challenge for this team.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to watch this volleyball team in their season. But thank you so much for joining us, Emme. When we return, Clark Dalton and Jake Herman will take us inside the world of fantasy football. Hello and welcome back into College Press Box. We are now going to head over to Clark Dalton and Jake Herman, who will give us an inside look into fantasy football this week.
Well, Connor, if your fantasy team is 0-3, there's no need to worry because Jake and I are here with all of our fantasy expertise. We're going to give that to you tonight so you can turn your season around. Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, especially with my 2-1 fantasy team, and I can't wait to dive in.
See? Fantasy expert right here. He's all happy. And let's get right into it. And let's start with some of the best players in fantasy. This has been one of the best seasons ever so far. There are a lot of top performers. Josh Allen is included. But my MVP is going to be Russell Wilson. So far through 3 games, he's thrown 14 touchdowns. That's the most in NFL history. And he is the #1 quarterback overall in ESPN's fantasy rankings right now. He's averaging 34 points per game. And one thing that makes Russ a little bit different is his ability to scramble around in that magic. That always grants him a few extra points. And now with the weapons he has, that makes him even more dangerous. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, Clark, Seahawks are really letting Russ cook this year, and that's really a great pick for MVP. I'll go with the running back position. The MVP there is going to be Alvin Kamara. He's been the highest scoring running back through 3 weeks, and really he's shown that he's going to be a matchup-proof, lock him in, top 5 running back this season, which is really exactly what you hope for if you drafted him. He's looking like somebody that can win your league because of his pass catching ability. It really gives him a high floor each and every week. No matter how much the Saints have to abandon the run, Kamara is going to be a factor. He played through an injury all of last year, and this year, as you can see, he has all of his explosiveness back, Clark.
Absolutely. Jake, a trademark throughout Alvin Kamara's career has been his consistency and his versatility. And now that he's all healthy and he's proving himself in tough matchups, that makes him a great MVP candidate. Unfortunately, every year in fantasy, as every general manager learns, there are some guys who don't live up to expectations. So these are what we have deemed as unfortunately bust, guys who are usually good, but just not the same this year. For me, it has to be Carson Wentz. Coming into the year, he was on QB1 territory. He was ranked as the 10th best quarterback in fantasy. He has dropped all the way to 25th. Through the first 2 games, he averaged just a little less than 13 points per game. He didn't put up over 20 points until he faced a subpar Cincinnati defense. And it's not getting any easier over the next couple of weeks. He faces the 49ers and Steelers, who are 2 of the top defenses in the NFL. And statistically, he's thrown 3 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Just haven't seen the same MVP form that we saw in 2017.
No, we really have not. And Carson Wentz not getting a whole lot of help from his offensive line there in Philadelphia either. You probably should look for another option at quarterback. I agree with you there. My bust candidate is going to be T.Y. Hilton on the Indianapolis Colts. You know, there were people out there that thought Phillip Rivers would finally be the guy to come in and play quarterback in Indianapolis and improve T.Y. Hilton's fantasy stock to what it once was when Andrew Luck was playing under center there. But it's really concerning that the Colts offense has really gone dink and dunk. There isn't too big of a role for T.Y. Hilton thus far in that offense. He's really down in the low 70s in terms of rankings for fantasy wide receiver. If you drafted him, counting on starting him every week, it's long past time to look for other options because Phillip Rivers just doesn't have that chemistry with T.Y. Hilton on those deep passes down the field.
Absolutely. T.Y. Hilton, he was a dynamic playmaker at the beginning of his career when he had a healthy Andrew Luck. It's been rough for him since he just hasn't had that same presence at quarterback. And with the Colts using more of an offense that is dink and dunk, it doesn't make him a wide receiver one this year. But every year in fantasy, there's a guy who gets off to a slow start and finds a way to crawl back. These are the buy lows. You might want to trade for, but you don't necessarily want to sell the farm for. And I'm going to start with Kenyon Drake. He's a running back for the Cardinals. Now, he hasn't popped necessarily, but he's been solid as a flex option. He's the 23rd best running back in fantasy right now. He's averaging 11.6 points per game. And these next couple weeks, it's going to get easier with the defenses he faces. He faces the Cowboys, the Jets, and the Seahawks, all of whom are not strong in stopping the run. So don't sell the farm for him necessarily, but do consider him as an RB2 option because his numbers are going to increase. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, Clark, as someone who invested big in Kenyon Drake on draft day, I'm sort of crossing my fingers, hoping that he gets back to form. My buy low candidate, though, is Joe Mixon because similar to Kenyon Drake, he's a guy that you're not getting the value out of him that you thought you would. He's getting plenty of touches, plenty of opportunities, but he hasn't done too much with them yet. It's kind of a miracle that he hasn't gotten into the end zone. He's had chances to get in all of his first 3 games. But I think Joe Mixon is going to start just like he did last year, start a little slow, and he's going to improve as it goes, especially because the Bengals have a rookie, Joe Burrow, who's going to get more and more comfortable as the season goes along. Joe Mixon, as you saw right now, in the low 30s when it comes to running back production. But I think he's going to climb his way inside that top 20 by the end of the season. If you're looking for a running back, if you had some injuries last week, see if you can get Joe Mixon for cheap.
Absolutely, Jake. And this is what we saw last year with Mixon, is he got off to a bit of a slow start, but by the end of the year, he was a top 20 running back. Now that you have all of this expertise, go out there and win your fantasy championship. We're going to toss it back over to Hannah.
All right. Thank you so much, you guys. Clark, Jake, it was great hearing what y'all had to say. And when we return, we will head down to Dripping Springs for some high school football. Welcome back into College Press Box. We are now going to throw it over to Adam Ogburn, who covered high school football matchup this past Friday between the Dripping Springs Tigers and the Tivy Antlers.
The Dripping Springs Tigers and the Kerrville Tivy Antlers squared off in their season opener on Friday night in Dripping Springs. Tivy defensive back Jack Patterson had a big first half with a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and 2 interceptions as the teams went into halftime scoreless. In the second half, UT baseball commit Cameron O'Bannon found Preston Alford for a 4-yard touchdown to put Dripping Springs up 7-0. Tivy had moments where it looked like it would respond, including an impressive catch by receiver Jack Frazier. However, a late scoop and score by John Martinez for Dripping Springs sealed a 14-0 victory for the Tigers on the night. Here's what Cameron O'Bannon had to say about the game.
And it's always good to start off on a positive note. You know, we got a lot of things to work on, a lot of things to clean up, but I really think we're going to be in a good position this year.
O'Bannon, who is a Texas baseball commit, also said he is looking forward to his time on the 40 acres.
I've grown up in this city my whole life. It's home. You know, I've been a Longhorn fan since I can remember, and UT is a very prestigious university. Burnt Orange runs really deep, and I really want to be a part of that tradition and that excellence at that university, especially in the baseball program.
Dripping Springs head coach Galen Zimmerman was also encouraged by what he saw from his team's dynamic duo of Preston Alford and Cameron O'Bannon.
Cameron O'Bannon and Preston Alford are the guys that the offense ran through last year, and it's kind of the same this year. Both of those guys are versatile. So both of those guys right there you have the ability to do a lot of things. And I think once we kind of fine tune and hone down, what we're going to be good at with this team, those two guys are going to be kind of the focal point.
Preston Alford and Cameron O'Bannon will continue to be key players for the Dripping Springs offense, as evidenced by tonight's performance. And after a shutout defensively with a scoop and score late on, the Tigers certainly put other teams in their district on notice. From Tiger Stadium in Dripping Springs, I'm Adam Ogburn, TSTV Sports.
Thank you so much, Adam. And now let's move to the soccer pitch. The Longhorns soccer team scored their first win of the season at home against the University of Oklahoma at Mike A. Myers Stadium. The goal came from freshman forward Presley Eccles off of the assist from senior Haley Berg. The 1-0 win over the Sooners moves the Longhorns to a 1-2 record heading into their next game against West Virginia. The Texas men's basketball team announced 2 new hires to their program. Nevada Smith, the former head coach of the NBA G League Sioux Falls Skyforce, joins the Longhorns as the director of program development. And Cody San Miguel, who was previously the assistant coach and video coordinator at the United States Air Force Academy, joins Texas as the coordinator of video and operations. The Texas women's golf team concluded the opening day of the Schooner Fall Classic in 11th place overall going into the second round. The first day was cut short with only 31 of the 36 holes completed before play was suspended due to high winds. Texas won the event last year and is looking to do so again this year. Texas men's golf kicks off their season this week at the Colonial Collegiate Classic in Fort Worth. They are set to compete 4 times this fall, and this tournament in Fort Worth will determine the seeding for next weekend's Big 12 match play tournament starting on Friday. Let's take a look at Longhorns' schedule this week. Volleyball playing at home against Kansas this Thursday and Friday at 7. Catch the game on LHN. Men's golf begins their Big 12 match play on Friday and playing through the weekend. Women's tennis plays at the TCU Invitational starting on Friday and playing through the weekend. Soccer is going on the road to Morgantown to take on West Virginia at 6. Catch the game on the Big 12 on ESPN+. And football will return to DKR this Saturday to face off against TCU at 11 a.m. Catch that game on Fox. And that is all we have for you tonight on College Press Box. Be sure to check out College Crossfire on Wednesday nights and tune in on Friday mornings to the 1-0 Sports Show. From all of us here in our virtual studio and those behind the scenes that make this all possible, I'm Hannah Burbank. Have a great night.